Hi, my name's Eric, and I'll be reading you selections from the Falmouth Enterprise for this week, dated Friday, January 9th of 2026. And that date's important because we'll repeat this reading through Tuesday of next week. And because many readers like to listen to it on the day of publication, which is on Fridays, the weather forecast is relevant. This afternoon it'll be partly sunny with patchy fog. At night, cloudy with patchy fog and showers likely. It's warming up a little bit, folks. The high will be 47 with a low around 40. Tomorrow, Saturday, during the day and night, there'll be rain. The high will be 46 with a low around 39. The extended forecast for Sunday calls for rain during the day, cloudy with rain likely at night. A high of 45 expected on Sunday with a low of 30. There are several meetings to be held next week. The school committee will meet Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. in the school administration building. The planning board meets Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. in the town hall. The library trustees meet Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. in the library with a Zoom option. Solid Waste Advisory Committee meets Tuesday at 7 p.m. in the town hall. The Energy Committee meets Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. in the town hall. The Veterans Council meets Wednesday at 4 p.m. in the town hall. The Conservation Commission meets Wednesday at 7 p.m. via Zoom. The Recreation Committee meets Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the Gus Canty Community Center. The Substance Use Commission meets Thursday at 5:30 p.m. in the library with a Zoom option. And the Zoning Board meets Thursday at 6 p.m. in the town hall. The headline above the fold, if there was such a thing in a digital newspaper, Select Board takes extra time to review proposed short-term rental bylaw by Lynn Hutchinson. A town advisory committee has developed a short-term rental bylaw, but the Select Board has decided the proposed policy needs additional review and discussion before deciding whether to advance it to town meeting. The purpose of the bylaw is to create a system for regulating short-term rentals in order to preserve the availability of year-round housing, protect residential neighborhoods from nuisance conditions, and ensure that rental properties are safe and habitable, the draft reads. Under the draft bylaw, any dwelling unit or portion of a dwelling unit offered as a short-term rental would be required to obtain a license from the town. Occupancy limits would be established at no more than 2 people per bedroom. Licenses would be issued for a 2-year term. Each short-term rental would be required to have a designated operator responsible for day-to-day operations and emergency response. And that operator must live within 20 miles of the rental property and be available at all times during rental periods to respond to emergencies or complaints. Owners may only obtain 3 short-term rental licenses. Additionally, fractional ownership arrangements in C Corporation, S Corporation, or trust entities would not be able to receive that license. Partial rentals would be allowed only under additional conditions, including if the rental or occupancy was not within non-habitable spaces, such as garages and unfinished basements. Dwelling units designated as affordable or income-restricted housing and structures that are movable or not built on a permanent foundation are prohibited from receiving a license. As it's currently proposed, the administration and enforcement of the bylaw would largely be within the Board of Health's jurisdiction. Short-term rentals may be subject to inspections and investigation if complaints are made or if violations are suspected. During the Select Board's discussion of the draft bylaw, initial concerns were raised. Select Board Chairman Robert Muscali expressed worry about the degree of authority delegated to the Board of Health, particularly with respect to future regulations and licensing fees that could be adopted. The draft bylaw grants the Board of Health authority to implement the regulation and to promulgate rules, regulations, policies, and procedures for the administration and enforcement of short-term rental. Muscali also raised concerns about provisions restricting corporate ownership, noting that the term corporation can include small, locally based ownership structures formed for liability purposes. I'm not really 100% in agreement that those types of arrangements should absolutely be barred, Muscali said. Certainly multinational corporations, he concluded, pointed pointing to some of the issues that the bylaw aims to address: the rise in corporate short-term rentals through online services, and the further commercialization of housing that could be year-round. Select Board Vice Chair Heather Goldstone raised concerns about the timing of the proposal, stating that the board was being asked to consider a significant policy with limited time to review the draft. An earlier draft was attached to the board agenda packet and posted online last week, but a new draft landed on the Select Board's desk the same evening of the meeting. The new draft was developed following a short-term rental advisory committee meeting that was held January 2nd. Goldstone noted that the advisory committee's charter requires regular check-ins with the Select Board and expressed concern that this process hadn't occurred. She emphasized the concern is not unique to just this committee and pushed for increased communication and collaboration between advisory committees and the Select Board moving forward. Town Manager Michael Renshaw addressed the operational and financial impacts of implementing the bylaw. He indicated that administering the position would likely require the creation of 2 new town positions, particularly related to inspections and enforcement. Town meeting has already allocated funding for a short-term rental software platform, and town staff have vetted potential systems, but Renshaw said is not confident that the additional fee would offset those personnel costs. Renshaw's comment was in context to the town's projected 5-year operating budget that projects a nearly $40 million deficit. Adding any additional staff could increase that deficit. The Select Board didn't take a vote on whether to advance the proposed bylaw to town meeting. It will have 2 other opportunities to consider the bylaw and provide any recommended changes to the advisory committee. There is a photo in the middle of the paper, on the front page of the Falmouth Enterprise of Friday, January 9th. The headline reads, "Ink from Melted Down Firearms Powers One Woman's Quiet Push for Gun Reform. Fewer Guns, More Art," by Lynn Hutchinson. For some people, activism looks like marching in the streets, holding signs on the village green, or testifying at the State House. Others write letters to their representatives, or create petition articles for town meeting, or host educational programs. For Nan Garrett Logan, it looks a little quieter. It looks like handmade greeting cards, soft washes of watercolor, carefully chosen literary quotes, and ink made from melted down AR-15 rifles. Her cause? Gun reform. Garrett Logan didn't begin as an activist or even as a visual artist in the traditional sense. For years, she worked in information technology at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in Woods Hole. As retirement approached, she found herself with more time to pursue her creative endeavor. She started small in 2005. First, she crafted greeting cards featuring natural materials like twigs, feathers, and seashells, layered over handmade decorative paper she sourced. Her first cards were sold at Coffee Obsession in Woods Hole. Garrett Logan began developing her signature style, which features classic quotes from literary authors like Melville, Austen, and Thoreau, when Carol Chittenden, the founder and then owner of 8 Cousins Books, suggested she feature Moby Dick in time for the 2010 Falmouth Readers town-wide 25-hour reading marathon of Moby Dick. She works in small batches, usually no more than a dozen cards at a time. "That's about the limit of my attention span on these," she said. "I used to do more like 20, but then they can become a chore. I just do it because it's sort of a joy." The process of creating a card is haphazard, she said. Selecting paper, pairing textures, and choosing a quote are all based on what feels right. "I can't think about anything when I sit down at my designated space in my designated room," Garrett Logan said about the creative process. "The world goes away." The 35-year-old Woods Hole resident has maintained her artistic style, but with purpose. Like many, she was shaken by the 2014 Sandy Hook school shootings. Her advocacy is not rooted in personal tragedy. Rather, it's spurred from an unexpected place. "I don't like meetings," Garrett Logan said, prefacing how she got involved in activism. "I don't really yearn for meetings." Despite her dislike for meetings, She was convinced to attend a gathering of Cape Cod Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. She would find herself returning to the group and becoming involved with the Mass Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence and pushing for statewide gun reform policies, like an act relative to the reduction of gun violence, which was signed into law in 2014. The 2014 law implemented criminal background checks for all gun sales and requires the state to submit to the National Background Check System of records of those prohibited from buying guns due to mental health reasons. Her interest in gun safety intersected with her art in 2024 when a friend attended an art show in Boston and learned about our Rural Pen Inkworks. Thomas Little, who's founder of a Rural Pen Inkworks, transforms guns into writing ink while removing firearms from circulation. Little, an illustrator, became fascinated with making pigment for his art. He began studying historic ink making more than 15 years ago and became drawn to what he calls a very overlooked substance. While researching iron gall ink, he learned that iron sulfate, the key ingredient in ink, can be made by dissolving iron in sulfuric acid. What was fascinating was just the fact that there wasn't really much literature on it at all. And it's sort of ironic, Little said, because ink is what we've used to record things, but there was nothing really recorded about the actual process of making ink. That's what inspired Little to explore the chemistry and process of making his own ink. And growing up in the South with a father who was a gunsmith, Little was surrounded by gun parts. I sort of put two and two together and I was like, wow, I could make ink out of a gun, he said. After losing friends to gun violence while living in New Orleans, the symbolism deepened. He began dissolving guns around 2013 and started selling ink in small batches in 2018. Now most of his ink, he said, is made from donated guns. Garrett Logan was intrigued. Within minutes of searching, she found Little and ordered a small batch. He's very accessible, Garrett Logan said of Little. In early 2025, Garrett Logan began committing to using the gun-derived ink. She incorporated the ink as a subtle wash of color, sometimes as fine black or gray lines, layered into abstract patterns. The designs are intentionally non-representational. There are no guns depicted, no violence illustrated. Customers or receivers of the card might not even be aware of the original story of the material until they read the brief description on the back of the card, which includes an artist's statement, a description about the author being featured, and a note on the ink used. Her cards are sold at 8 Cousins Books on Main Street in Falmouth, Market Street Bookshop at Mashpee Commons, and at times Under the Sun in Woods Hole, places that have embraced the work without hesitation. Those stores have been wonderful and accept whatever I make, whenever I make it, Garrett Logan said. Nobody's stopped accepting inventory because I put the gun stuff on. Nobody said, oh, we can't do this. I'm just happy to be able to raise some awareness about our concerns about our relationship with guns and our culture, she added. Our next headline on the front page of the Falmouth Enterprise this week, Care Network brings unhoused in from the streets, by Katie Nelson. Across Cape Cod, an estimated 500 individuals have unstable housing or no housing at all. In a presentation to the Affordable Housing Committee in November, Gina Torrielli, Vice Chairwoman of the committee and Executive Director of the nonprofit organization Belonging to Each Other, said an estimated 30% of individuals experiencing homelessness on Cape Cod are in Falmouth. As winter conditions intensify, organizations and town departments work together to save the lives of individuals living in unsuitable conditions, in their cars, for instance, or entirely outdoors. The Cape's only emergency shelter can hold only 50 individuals, and only those who have completed the required paperwork and meet eligibility criteria are able to receive shelter. Often individuals seeking emergency shelter are sent out of the area to Lowell, New Bedford, or Plymouth, where beds may be available, Torrielli said. Shelter from the elements can mean the difference between life and death. Susie Hauptman, director of Falmouth Human Services, said Duffy Health Center's In From the Streets program has undoubtedly saved hundreds of lives in Falmouth. The program expanded to Falmouth in 2023. Cassie Danzel, Chief Operating Officer of the Housing Assistance Corporation, the HAC, said, because the need for support in town has become substantial. Collecting data on how many people are experiencing homelessness is challenging, but Danzel estimated that roughly 70 to 100 people in Falmouth are without permanent or stable housing. Duffy Health Center's In From the Streets program places up to 26 individuals experiencing homelessness in a Falmouth area hotel, where 13 rooms are reserved for the program. It operates when overnight temperatures are projected to fall below 32 degrees or during extreme heat events. Since Thanksgiving, overnight temperatures have dipped below freezing on more than 30 days. To maximize capacity, individuals who need a safe place to stay may double up in rooms. In the event of an overflow, the Falmouth Service Center pays for up to 3 additional rooms. In From the Streets operates year-round during severe weather events and works to connect individuals with services that are offered by community partners. Case management services are provided by HAC and the Falmouth Human Services Department. Food distribution and access to clothing and sanitary items are available through the Falmouth Service Center, which also offers private space for case managers to meet with clients with dignity and confidentiality. Belonging to each other assists individuals with transitional housing during the winter months and provides housing services year-round. Navigating housing assistance application, housing lotteries, wait lists, and short-term stabilization housing can be challenging. Danzel described housing as a convoluted network in an interview with the Enterprise. Hauptman explained that state-funded programs and shelters don't always allow agencies to assist individuals immediately. People may need to prove their homeless status and have that information verified before accessing certain programs, and that can take days or weeks. She offered a hypothetical example. If an individual experiencing homelessness requests an available emergency shelter bed, they may remain unhoused while the state verifies their status, and by the time that process is complete, the bed may no longer be available. When state processes move slowly, Hauptman said, the community steps in to provide rapid support. The In From the Streets program has saved hundreds of lives, she said. Danzel credited a dedicated core of community partnerships that work collaboratively to ensure people are connected to needed services. This essential service network includes representatives from the Falmouth Human Services Department, the Falmouth Service Center, Belonging to Each Other, the HAC, Duffy Health Center, and the Falmouth Police Department. The group meets twice per month to coordinate efforts, avoid duplication, and distribute resources effectively. Homeless outreach specialists such as HAC's Stefan Roalt meet individuals wherever they are and help coordinate services. Roalt may meet clients in meeting rooms at the Falmouth Service Center, where individuals can also access food distribution. Outreach specialists may help individuals find emergency accommodations or connect them to medical or mental health treatment. They also assist with registering for housing wait lists or applying for housing lotteries, tasks that can be daunting without guidance. Having a case manager, Danzel said, is like having a housing translator. Molly Marshall and Stephanie Doherty are behavioral health clinicians with the Falmouth Police Department. Marshall said that twice per month, clinicians and police officers visit areas where chronically homeless individuals stay to increase outreach and connect people to services. Falmouth Service Center Executive Director Karen Delaney said that the Essential Service Network represents the best example of collaboration in town. We're each responsible for a component for the greater good, she said. Volunteers from Belonging to Each Other prepare frozen, microwavable meals twice per month in the Service Center's commercial kitchen. The organization also operates a van that transports clients to St. Barnabas's Episcopal Church, where they can receive a free lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays and connect to additional services through the A Place at the Table program. The church also provides temporary housing for women. When asked what the community may misunderstand about the unhoused population in Falmouth, Marshall said, "For the most part, the people we're working with are Falmouth residents." She added that people cannot reasonably be expected to leave their community and support systems to find housing elsewhere. Combined with limited housing options in Falmouth, she said, this contributes to ongoing chronic homelessness. Hauptman said residents who want to help can donate money, volunteer their time, or provide material support to the organizations that form the safety net for individuals experiencing homelessness. January is projected to have 17 additional nights with temperatures below freezing. Understanding the need and complexity of housing, Danzel said, can lead to sleepless nights for providers. You'll never sleep through a storm the same way again, she said. Our next headline in the Falmouth Enterprise: Select Board weighs use of unexpected $531,000 in new growth amid anticipated 5-year budget gap, by Lynn Hutchinson. The town's revenue from certified new growth came in $531,329 higher than projected, leaving the Select Board to decide how best to use the unexpected money. Options include restoring previously cut departmental requests, funding one-time expenditures aligned with strategic priorities, or applying the funds towards debt stabilization amid a projected 5-year, $40 million operational deficit. On December 1st, Town Manager Michael Renshaw presented his recommended fiscal year 2027 operating budget, totaling $183,838,121 to the Select Board. The proposal was built, he said, on conservative revenue assumptions and avoided a Proposition 2.5 override. To balance the budget, Renshaw recommended using $1.2 million of the town's $1.5 million in excess levy capacity. Based on state tax calculations, he said this approach would result in an average property tax increase of approximately $48. More than $2 million in additional departmental budget requests were not included in the fiscal year 27 proposal, the majority of which were personnel-related. According to the town's 5-year financial forecast, operating deficits are expected to grow significantly. Between fiscal year 28 and 30, the town is projected to face cumulative deficits of roughly $40 million, and that projection doesn't include the cost of adding new staff. During a subsequent budget discussion December 15th, Renshaw informed the Select Board that the town had $531,329 more in revenue than previously anticipated. He explained the funds could either be used to restore some of the cut budget items or reduce the amount of excess levy capacity needed to balance the fiscal year 27 budget. Reducing the levy usage would lower the projected average property tax increase from $48 to approximately $24 per household. Renshaw cautioned that funding new staffing positions would create recurring and compounding costs, further widening future deficits. While he didn't recommend adding staff, he said that if the board chose to do so, it should limit funding to a small but prioritized list. And that list could include a stormwater engineer position to bring the town into compliance with state requirements, or positions or programs directly tied to health and public safety. While the Select Board Chairman, Robert Muscali, emphasized the importance of regulatory compliance, other board members advocated for one-time expenditures or allocations to existing programs that could support long-term town goals or help address anticipated debt. Selectman Colin Reed was the most vocal on the issue, continuing to urge the board and town management to take a more holistic view of the town's finances. He noted that the operating budget addresses only day-to-day expenses, doesn't include major capital needs, such as the Outfall project, a new police station, or the Lawrence School renovation. This isn't about $48 or $24, Reed said. This is about what we're doing to prepare for 2028 into 2032. Cumulatively, that's a $40 million deficit, he said, holding up a piece of paper with the town's 5-year expense and revenue projection on it. Reed argued the Select Board should maintain the planned use of excess levy capacity and avoid expenditures that carry multi-year financial commitments. We can't afford it. It's clear. We can't afford it, he said, continuing to wave the paper. We need to carefully consider one-time expenditures that will help us with our strategic plan, he said, adding that the town should allocate the funds toward debt stabilization. Beyond the immediate allocation of new growth revenue, Reed advocated for the development of a 5-year financial stabilization plan within the next 30 to 60 days. If the task proved too large for town staff, he suggested using a portion of the new growth for a one-time consultant expense. We need to know everything, and we need to be on the same page. This is a team effort, Reed said, listing town management, select board, and the finance committee as responsible parties. I'm worried we're not looking at it in totality. Reed finished his remarks saying, right now we're only going down the path of raising taxes. I don't think that's the only way out. Vice Chairwoman Heather Goldstone spoke along similar lines, suggesting the unexpected revenue be leveraged so it doesn't create additional liability, including requesting a one-time allocation to the Affordable Housing Fund or toward the town's destabilization fund. I know I'm a person who every single year asks what was on that list that we didn't fund in order to balance the budget, Goldstone said. Those are important requests, but given what we're facing, I can't see adding to that pressure. Selectman Jack Richardson raised an alternative recommendation, advocating for accelerating the transition of the vacant town's administrative clerk position to full-time and starting the position earlier than originally planned. His goal is to have the residential tax exemption implemented before fiscal year 28. If we're going to raise taxes, we need to get the residential exemption online before fiscal year 28. Richardson, who's been a strong proponent of a residential tax exemption, said, I think we need to make the money available in this budget, and if we find it's truly impossible, then that's okay. But if we don't put the money in this budget, then we will not be able to vote on it in the future, and we'll be handcuffing ourselves. The Select Board ultimately directed the town manager to return with updated financial projections showing how the excess revenue could be allocated toward priorities that would not increase the town's long-term financial strain. Another discussion is planned for the next Select Board meeting that's scheduled for January 26th. The board voted on December 15th to transmit the proposed budget to the Finance Committee. The committee is scheduled to begin the budget review process on Wednesday, January 14th. And the final story on the front page of today's Falmouth Enterprise, dated January 9th of 2026, Falmouth Fire Chief Tim Smith to retire on January 23rd, by Katie Nelson. Falmouth Fire Rescue Department Chief Timothy R. Smith sat in his office on Tuesday morning, January 6th, among small but growing piles of paperwork, office knickknacks, photographs, and other evidence of a nearly 40-year career with the department, waiting to be sorted and packed up. Smith is set to retire on January 23rd. He sat down with the enterprise to review his tenure as well as his hopes for the next occupant of his position. After 39 years, Smith said he's ready to enjoy those special Falmouth moments like the 4th of July fireworks and the Falmouth Road Race for the first time as a regular resident rather than a first responder. Smith and his wife, Kathy, raised 2 sons, Owen and Cameron, in Falmouth and intend to remain in the community, though travel and extended visits with family are not off the table. Chief Smith, who's 64, comes from a long line of Providence firefighters on his mother's side. Raised in Cranston, Rhode Island, he began as a volunteer firefighter at age 18 in Patuxent. Seeking more emergency medical training, Smith enlisted in the U.S. Coast Guard and was stationed at Joint Base Cape Cod, then called Otis Air Force Base, where he learned to serve as a health services technician during helicopter medical evacuations. Smith became a Falmouth firefighter EMT in 1987, and since then, he's been promoted from lieutenant to captain to deputy chief in 2012, then chief, a role he was selected to fill in December of 2020. Before his promotion, Smith served as the acting fire chief when former fire chief Michael Small retired in July 2020. The Select Board and former town manager Julian Suso affirmed Smith as fire chief at a Select Board meeting on December 9th of 2020 at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. When Smith stepped into the role of chief, he said recruitment and retention issues were his primary concerns, along with dealing with aging fire stations. "Oh, it's all been a joy," Smith said. Smith said choosing one highlight from his career is a tall order. "If something can happen to someone, I saw it," Smith said. He's been a part of successful outcomes and positive stories, including 2 births, as well as tragic outcomes and devastating moments. Of course, the job, and specifically the management of a fire department, is challenging, Smith said. "The job is 24/7, 365, Smith said. But he added that the department of dedicated professionals and the respectful and supportive Falmouth community have made his job the best job in the world. A few of Smith's major accomplishments during his time as chief of the department include opening the Hatchville Fire Station in July and filling 14 positions after his appointment in 2020. On January 23rd, Smith and Fire Inspector Boyd DeMello will be ending their time at the fire department just as they began 39 years ago, together. Smith said, "I couldn't think of a better person to come and go with than Boyd." DeMello and Smith attended the Fire Academy together. Both began at the fire department in 1987. DeMello's an active resident who served on several committees, including the Hatchville Fire Station Building Committee and the Police Station Advisory Committee. DeMello is also well known as the voice of Falmouth Ice Rink, Smith said. DeMello announces Falmouth hockey games. His departure will leave a hole in the department, Smith said. He said the search for a new chief is ongoing. The town is utilizing Public Safety Consulting LLC to assist with the hiring process. That's the same firm used during the recent police chief search. Town manager Michael Renshaw informed the Select Board this week that his office has received 35 applications for the position. The consultant and town have narrowed the field to 4 finalists who will move forward to interviews and assessments held on Friday and Saturday, January 9th and 10th. The interviews and assessments will not be open to the public. As for his part in the process, Smith said he reviewed projects that the new chief will have to manage and oversee. Some of those projects include combining the North and West Falmouth fire stations, which will involve finding a suitable location and then upgrading of machinery and the equipment. And we're just a few minutes past the midway portion of our reading, and regular listeners, I'm sure, are aware. That's when we move to a different kind of local news, which are the obituaries, the death notices, and the memorials listed in this week's Falmouth Enterprise. And in the Enterprise dated January 9th, the first obituary is of Leroy E. Owens. Reverend Leroy E. Owens of Falmouth died January 1st at the age of 90. He was born in Brockton and grew up in Whitman. His family attended Holy Ghost Parish, where he was encouraged in his faith by Father John Roach. Entering the seminary in 1956, he was ordained by Archbishop Cardinal Cushing at the Holy Cross Cathedral in 1964. His first assignment was to St. Joseph's Parish in Kingston. In 1969, he was assigned to Our Lady Help of Christians in Newton, where he was a faculty member, chaplain, and athletic director. That 14-year assignment made him widely known at the parish, where he returned regularly to perform baptisms and weddings. After retiring at the age of 87, he continued his ministry at the Quarterdeck Restaurant in Falmouth, which he referred to as his last parish. Visiting hours were held Thursday, January 8th, yesterday, from 3 to 7 p.m. at Chapman Funerals and Cremations. A funeral mass is to be celebrated today, Friday, January 9th, at 1 p.m. at St. Anthony's Catholic Church in East Falmouth, and the burial will be private. The next obituary is of Karen A. Walker of East Falmouth, who passed on January 2nd at the age of 68. She was born in Wareham and was an active member of the Falmouth community. She operated a home preschool daycare program for more than 30 years and kept in touch with many of the children she cared for years later. A celebration of life will be private. The next obituary is of Janet P. Wilbur of Wacoit, who passed at the age of 95 on January 1st. She graduated from St. Luke's Nursing School as a registered nurse in 1952, caring for others throughout her career. She was predeceased by her husbands Howard Wilbur Jr. and Malcolm Cornell. Burial will be held at the Massachusetts National Cemetery in Bourne. A memorial service will be held at a later date at Wacoit Congregational Church in Wacoit. The next obituary is of Ruth A. Lawrence of Mashpee, who passed at the age of 82 on January 3rd. She was born in Worcester and was a graduate of Worcester City Hospital School of Nursing, working for 28 years for the Mass Department of Public Health as a healthcare facility inspector, retiring in 2003. She was predeceased by her brother, Robert Matokaitis. Visitation will be held on Tuesday, January 13th at St. Jude's Chapel at Christ the King Parish in Mashpee from 10 to 10:30 a.m., with a funeral mass to follow at 10:30 a.m. The next obituary is of Shirley Lemaire. Shirley M. Lemaire of Pecasset, formerly of East Falmouth, passed on January 4th at the age of 90. She was born in Naugatuck, Connecticut, and was a graduate of Woonsocket High School. She leaves many family and friends and was predeceased by her husband of more than 60 years, Fernand Lemaire. Burial at Massachusetts National Cemetery in Bourne will be private. The next memorial is of Anne W. DeWeese, née Wright, age 91, who passed on December 28th in Falmouth. Born in Richmond, Rhode Island, she was a dedicated mother, nurse, and community leader. A memorial service with a celebration to follow will be held on January 17th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Cape Cod Curling Club, located at 37 Highfield Drive in Falmouth. In lieu of flowers, any contributions may be made to the Cape Cod Curling Club or the Falmouth 300 Committee, honoring Anne's commitment to her community and passions. To order memorial trees or send flowers to the family in memory of Anne W. DeWeese, you can visit the flower store. Elizabeth McCarty is the next memorial. In loving memory of Elizabeth McCarty of Falmouth, who passed on Saturday, December 27th, at the age of 99. Betty is survived by many family and friends. Her funeral will be held later in the spring. Burial will be in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The next memorial is of Elizabeth Flagg. Elizabeth née Brown Flagg died peacefully on Tuesday, December 23rd, at age 93. She was born September 20th, 1932 in Auburn, Maine. Betty graduated from Bates College in 1954 with a B.A. in English. Later, she earned her M.A. in education from BU, and over many summers, she continued to broaden and widen her education through courses at Wesleyan. A celebration of Betty's life will be held Saturday, January 10th at 1 p.m. at the Wacoit Congregational Church. The burial will be private. Contributions in her memory may be made to Caring Hospice Services of Cape Cod, 11 Vanderbilt Avenue in Norwood, Mass. The next memorial is of Paul Lester Friedman, who was born October 5th of 1946 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and passed surrounded by loved ones December 22nd at the age of 79. A celebration of life will be held April 11th of 2026 at 1 o'clock p.m. at the Church of the Messiah Parish Hall, 22 Church Street in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. In lieu of flowers, the family suggests making donations to the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, AFTD. And the final memorial is of Mary Jane Kelly, who passed peacefully on December 30th at the age of 78. In addition to her loving husband, Frank, Mary Jane is survived by many family and friends. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital at 501 St. Jude Place in Memphis, Tennessee, 38105, or the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, P.O. Box 414238, Boston, Mass., in memory of Mary Jane Kelly, Please add that to your contribution. A private service will be held at the Massachusetts National Cemetery on Connery Avenue in Bourne. And the following residents, former residents, or family of residents of Bourne, Mashpee, and Sandwich recently died. Harold M. Cloran, 82, of Mashpee, died December 26th of 2025. And that concludes the obituaries, death notices, and memorials listed in this week's Falmouth Enterprise, dated Friday, January 9th of 2026. It's a good time to remind you that if you miss any of the information that we share, including some of these service dates, you can always go to audiblelocalledger.org. It's a fully disability-compliant website, and click on the Listen tab, and under All Reads to the Blind, you'll find 150 of our readings in chronological order that rotate through, so you can catch up on anything that you might have missed. You'll also find a wide variety of periodicals and literature, as well as shopping guides up there for what's on sale at the supermarket. All of that is free for people who are blind or print disabled at audiblelocalledger.org. Moving back inside the paper to the news section, on page 3, 8 cousins to consolidate, leaving their 189 Main Street location, by Lynn Hutchinson. 8 Cousins Books will be moving out of one of its 2 Main Street locations by end of May. After 2 years of operating with 2 locations, we've realized we're more efficient and more united as a team when we're all together in one space, the owners announced on Wednesday. Although we've enjoyed the adventure of the 2 spaces and the support of our Falmouth community, we believe that a single location provides the opportunity for more seamless service and enhanced community engagement. In a phone call with the Enterprise, co-owner Eileen Miskell shared that the bookstore's lease of the brick building at 189 Main Street is set to expire at the end of May. Starting in the next few weeks, we'll be moving our children's books, toys, and games out of 8 Cousins Kids, 189 Main Street, and into our 8 Cousins location at 199 Main Street, the owners stated in a newsletter issued on Wednesday. The independently owned bookstore expanded its business, adding a second store located at 199 Main Street on July 1st of 2024. The expansion of space was also an expansion in offering, providing a designated space featuring teen and adult titles. The well-known brick building at 189 Main Street's been used as a children-centered space since that time, with children's books, toys, and gifts. The bookstore was founded by Carol Chittenden and her mother, Betty Borg. The doors first opened July 1st, 1986 at 630 Main Street, and 6 years later the store was relocated to 189 Main Street. Over the years, the business also saw a shift in ownership. Chittenden and Borg transferred ownership in 2015 to residents and longtime employees Mary F. Buckley, Sarah Hines, and Miskell. In 2021, Janet B. Totten joined the 8 Cousins ownership team. Buckley retired in December of 2020. During the transition, the store will remain open, but the store owners are asking the community to check their website for their updated hours. County could help Falmouth monitor performance of denitrifying septic systems, by Katie Nelson. The Board of Health is considering whether to participate in the Barnstable County Septic Utility Program, the SUP, which would provide monitoring and sampling to evaluate the performance and operation of IA, innovative alternative, denitrifying septic systems. In previous meetings, the board has discussed the best ways to measure how effectively these IA systems remove nitrogen. In Falmouth, IA septic systems are required to meet a target of 10 milligrams of nitrogen per liter, as part of the town's effort to achieve the total maximum daily load for nitrogen established by the Mass DEP. David Iorio Izzo, the county's septic utility program manager, gave a presentation to the board at its meeting on Monday, January 5th. The county program operates under the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment in the Wastewater Division, which also includes the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Test Center, an IA tracking database, and the Aqua Fund, a low-interest loan program to assist homeowners with betterment loans. SUP fulfills a critical need in the county that municipal staff don't have the capacity to meet, Izzo said. He explained that the county created SUP to be a responsible management entity involved with every part of the life cycle of an IA system. Services provided through SUP are customizable, Izzo said, and vary in cost from roughly $60 per household per year for baseline services, which include operation and installation monitoring and making sure each operator and homeowner has a contract for oversight in place. SUP also provides operating and maintenance oversight of IA systems, and the data collected from sampling would be entered into a centralized database. Izzo said SUP can also offer certification and education for septic operators, inspectors, and installers. After the presentation, Board of Health Chairman Kevin Kroger said SUP seems to have an essential role to play in town going forward. Kroger asked if SUP will be able to assist homeowners who need to install an IA in finding trustworthy septic operators. Izzo said the goal of the certification and education component of SUP is intended to help homeowners and towns identify certified operators. Stephen Layton, who's a member of the Water Quality Management Committee but was speaking as a resident, asked Izzo about fees associated with enhanced services offered through the program. Izzo said fees for sampling and troubleshooting under the program's enhanced services, which could include replacing inefficient parts, range on the high end from $2,000 per home to $500 to $800 on the low end. Each sampling event also has an associated lab fee, which can range from $165 to $185, Izzo said. Enhanced services available through SUP include sampling and inspecting septic systems to ensure they're operating within Mass DEP parameters. If the systems aren't operating as they should, SUP would figure out why and try to bring the system into compliance. SUP representatives work with homeowners and try to resolve the septic issue. If an issue is not resolved, the Board of Health can issue an enforcement on the homeowner for an out-of-compliance system. The Board of Health took no action after the presentation. If the board and the town decide to move forward with participating in SUP, the board would meet with representatives to identify services needed by the town. Then the board would vote, and then finally public hearings would be held before any contractual agreement would be reached. Free tax prep for income-eligible residents is available. IRS-certified Massachusetts AARP tax aid volunteers will offer free tax preparation for low to moderate income taxpayers of all ages during the 2026 tax season. In Falmouth, services will run from February 4th through April 14th at the Gus Canty Community Center. Appointments are available Tuesdays and Wednesdays, with a limited number of Thursday appointments on February 5th for those unable to attend on other days. This is a drop-off service. Taxpayers bring documents in the early morning and pick up completed returns early afternoon the same day. To schedule an appointment, call 508-540-0196. Additional dates and times are available at nearby locations, and you can go to aarp.org to get more information. But to schedule an appointment, again, call 508-540-0196. From the editorial board of the Falmouth Enterprise, facing our fiscal future. Is the town finally prepared to confront its longer-term financial reality? For the second time in as many months, town manager Michael Renshaw has informed the select board that even with conservative budgeting, the town faces roughly $40 million in cumulative operating deficits between fiscal year 2028 and fiscal year 30, not including major capital projects or any additional staffing. That's a projection that should make everyone in town sit up straight and pay close attention. The looming deficit came up again this week as the board was discussing what to do with $531,329 in unexpected new growth revenue. Address staffing needs, reinstate items that were trimmed from the budget, reduce the budget's reliance on excess levy capacity next year, or sock it away for a rainy day? Select board member Colin Reed got right to the point. He said the town needs a 5-year financial stabilization plan and it needs one soon. Reed argued that budget decisions can't be made in isolation 1 year at a time. We should all be able to agree on that basic point. Without a coordinated, disciplined, multi-year plan that accounts for operating costs and capital needs, debt, and tax policy, the town is essentially budgeting blind. Select Board Vice Chairwoman Heather Goldstone echoed that concern during Monday's meeting. While acknowledging that departmental budget requests are important, she cautioned against adding pressure to future budgets and supported using the new growth in ways that don't create additional liability. Her suggestion to leverage the money through one-time allocations or stabilization efforts reinforces the same core idea. Short-term fixes should not make long-term problems worse. A 5-year financial stabilization plan makes sense. It would force alignment between the Select Board, the Finance Committee, which begins its budget review work next week, and town staff. It would clarify what's affordable, what's not, and what trade-off residents could expect. If town staff lacks the capacity to produce that plan quickly, Reed suggested using some of the one-time new growth funds for a one-time consultant. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get on board with Reed's ideas and make this stabilization plan a reality. Without a clear shared roadmap, the town risks drifting toward higher taxes and deeper deficits by default. Our next headline: Attorney General says the school committee broke open meeting law when voting on Dewar's contract, by Katie Nelson. The state attorney general's office confirmed January 2nd that the school committee violated open meeting law on May 13th during an executive session, and as a result, all members of the committee will need to complete a webinar on open meeting law within 90 days. The determination letter from Assistant Attorney General Matthew Lindberg said that the committee violated open meeting law by posting an agenda with inadequate information and by voting on Superintendent Lori Dewar's contract renewal in executive session. During the session, the committee voted in favor of offering Dewar a $213,000 salary and a 6-year contract. The contract was signed on or about May 20th, which was prior to the June 10th vote in an open meeting that officially approved the contract. The committee essentially approved the contract in executive session, the letter said, without any indication that the contract wouldn't be effective until it was approved in an open public meeting. The determination letter said that the committee's June 10th vote was a superfluous ceremony without practical import. The agenda, which stated that the school committee was in an executive session to conduct negotiations of a non-union contract, should have indicated specifically which non-union salary contract was being discussed, the letter said. Lindberg's determination also identified that Dewar was present during the first half of the executive session. She, meaning Dewar, knew that the committee was convening in executive session to discuss the contract with her. By failing to identify her in the notice and in the announcement prior to entering executive session, the committee violated the open meeting law, Lindberg wrote in the determination letter. Current school committee chairwoman Terry Medeiros said every member of the committee will complete a webinar produced by the Attorney General's office on open meeting laws they've been legally ordered to do. Medeiros said the Attorney General's office provided a list of recommendations and resources to improve the committee's knowledge and practice of open meeting law. We will take action on those recommendations, Medeiros said in a phone call with the Enterprise. The open meeting law complaint was raised by Raquel A. Russell, who recently had a petitioner's article, Article 15, at the November town meeting, requesting an independent financial audit on the school's out-of-district special education tuition stabilization fund. The article did not pass. An additional open meeting law investigation on an incident related to that article is ongoing. In our final story, Select Board advances seasonal community designation to town meeting, by Lynn Hutchinson. The Select Board has voted to place an article on the April town meeting warrant to decide whether the town should accept the state's seasonal community designation, a housing initiative created under the Affordable Homes Act of 2024. A December 10th letter sent to the town manager's office from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities recognized the town as a seasonal community. According to the letter, the town qualified for the designation due to a short-term rental rate exceeding 3.25% of the overall housing inventory, and because more than 12.5% of its housing stock is used for seasonal, occasional, or recreational purposes, or is otherwise not occupied as a primary residence. The seasonal community designation is designed to help communities address housing challenges associated with seasonal residency and employment patterns that support a tourism-based economy. If accepted, the town would have the authority to establish year-round housing occupancy restrictions, requiring homes to be occupied for at least 10 months annually, and develop housing with a preference for essential municipal employees. The designation would also allow the town to establish a year-round housing trust fund, either independently or in collaboration with other seasonal communities, to support the creation and preservation of affordable and attainable housing for year-round residents. It would further permit the town to increase the residential property tax exemption for homeowners who occupy their property as a primary residence. While the town has discussed implementing a year-round residential tax exemption, the earliest possible implementation would be in fiscal year 2028. Without the seasonal community designation, state law limits the maximum residential tax exemption to 35% of the average assessed value of residential property in a municipality. Seasonal communities are required to adopt zoning bylaws allowing undersized lots in single-family zoning districts to be used for year-round, attainable residential development. The bylaws would also permit tiny houses to be built for year-round use. Those are under 400 square feet. During the Select Board discussion, Monday, January 5th, board members emphasized the decision ultimately rests with town meeting, which serves as the town's legislative body. It's clearly stated this is to be decided by the legislative body of Falmouth, board member Jack Richardson said. That would be town meeting, he clarified. I don't think it's our role to prevent it from town meeting. Select Board Vice Chairwoman Heather Goldstone spoke in support of the designation, echoing Richardson's view, but acknowledged tiny homes to be somewhat controversial, and she expects potential pushback from the community. I would like to better understand what the concerns are because I personally don't immediately see what the problem is, she said about tiny homes. Select Board member Douglas Brown responded with historical context, noting that the concerns might be misplaced. I find it interesting that that's our challenging stumbling block, Brown said. Back in the 40s, 50s, and even into the 60s, Cape Cod was nothing but tiny houses. So if you really want Cape Cod character, you want tiny houses. Select Board member Colin Reed pointed to the potential to assist with housing for municipal employees. The more we can have a preference for essential public workers, the better, Reed said. Select Board Chairman Robert Muscali emphasized an affirmative town meeting vote would not by itself after local zoning. Any zoning changes would require a separate approval process. If those changes aren't adopted, then the town would just forfeit its designation, Muscali said. Town meeting is scheduled for April 6th. And with that, we've come to the end of our reading of the Falmouth Enterprise for today, Friday, January 9th of 2026. This is your reader, Eric, saying be well, be safe, look after each other, and remember our veterans, especially those we've lost recently. Bye for now.